Let's pray before we begin. Lord, please let us understand your word and put it in our hearts. May it shape our lives to be more like your Son. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen.
Real quick, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share this with your friends. Thank you.
We have just won a great victory. Now, it's always good, after the game, if we won the game, to view the game film, to see just what we did right. And so we can know to do the same thing in the next game. Those of you that know football know that on Monday, the coaches, if not on Sunday night or Saturday night after the game, the coaches view the game film. And, for example, tonight, I'm sure, and tomorrow, I'm sure that Coach Tom Landry of the Dallas Cowboys will view the film of the game with Los Angeles to see exactly why they won the game. And so they'll know what to do in the Super Bowl next week, and so forth. Now, this morning, I want us to gather around for a while, and we're going to view the game film. We're going to see why we won. We're going to see what the ingredients were of victory, so we as a church family might remember what we did. It's so easy. You know, I don't know about you, but I do this. When I have a good day, I write down at the end of the day what I did and what happened. I want to have a good day again sometime. When I have a bad day, I write down what time I woke up, what I had in the morning to eat, what I had at noon to eat, who came to see me. I mean, for example, Brother Fisk came one day. I had a bad day. I never let him in anymore because I want to know what made the day bad. And I do this often. I keep a record of why, when at the end of sometimes of a great day, and after the great day, before I go to bed at night, and I write down great day and then list what I did all day long. It may be I can have another great day someday if I've got sense enough to know what made the day great. But most of us win a victory, never figure out why. Most of us have a good day, never understand why. Most of us you ought to know what you ate when you had a good day, and how much you ate when you had a good day, and who you were with when you had a good day, and so forth. And now we've won a great victory, and I want us this morning to view the game film for a little while and find exactly what we did right so we can keep doing those things that we did right. There are some basic laws that we have kept for several months around here, at least many of us. We have kept basic laws of success. May I say to you what I've said so often around the country? Success never comes accidentally. Failure always comes accidentally. Success is always on purpose. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the river of waters, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. You check your Bible over and over and over again, and you'll find recipes for success. You'll find no recipes for failure. You don't need any recipes for failure. Failure needs no planning. Failure needs no work. Failure needs no method. Failure needs no recipe. Failure is what will come anyway. We're failures by nature. We're failures by doing nothing. But if you succeed on purpose. Now, we at our church have for several weeks observed some basic laws of success. And I'm going to call your attention to 3 of them today so we can continue observing these laws so we might continue to have success. Number 1, we've learned this, and that is, before God works, we must do all we can do. Before God works, we must do all we can do. Don't you think, Dr. Billings, that God could have given us 18 months ago $2.5 million? Does God have $2.5 million? Is it true that God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? Is it true that all the gold belongs to God? Is it true that all the silver belongs to God? Then couldn't God have caused someone or some place to provide it $2.5 million for us 18 months ago? Oh, yes, he could. Well, why didn't God do it? Because God never does for us what we can do for ourselves. A student came to college, and he said, I'm not going to work, I'm going to go to college. God has called me to be a preacher, and I'm not going to get me a job. Why, he said, you think I'm going to go out there to some place, some steel mill, and work all night long? You think I'm going to go out there to some factory and work all afternoon till midnight at night, or maybe from 8 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock the next morning? Oh, no. God's going to provide for my needs. You got a hole in your head. There's something wrong with you, brother. You've got bats in your belfry. No, God will not do for you what you can do for yourself. Yeah, God could raise a crop down the loop in Chicago. God could raise a crop of corn and cotton and down the loop in Chicago. But God's not going to do it. Well, where's God going to raise cotton and corn? Where somebody works enough to get out and plow the field and chop the weed and plant and harvest. You say, well, that's not a miracle. It's a miracle when God gives the rain. It's a miracle when God gives the sunshine. God will give you a better crop by miracle. God will not, I say it again, God will not do for you what you can do for yourself. God could have healed Naaman the leper if he'd have stayed up in Syria, but he didn't. God could have sent Elisha up to Syria and healed Naaman, but God didn't do that. You think God or God had to have Naaman dip in the Jordan 7 times? Here comes Naaman the leper and a great caravan down from Syria. And the man of God, Elisha, says, go dip in the Jordan 7 times. Dr. Billings, you've seen the Jordan again, I guess. It's a muddy creek, about all it is. Not a beautiful river. Well, the ugliest piece of bits of water in the whole world is the Jordan River. No, it's not a clear, crisp kind of a river. It's a muddy old river and just sort of a creek. It's about the size in many places of the little Calumet River out here between Munster and Hammond, and just sort of a muddy creek-looking kind of a thing. And Elisha said, go wash in Jordan 7 times. And Naaman said, why, listen to me. Why, he stood up there in Syria. We've got a river called the River Abana. Why, it's 10 times as pretty and as big as the old Jordan. You think I'm going to go wash in that muddy Jordan? Elisha says, you get healed, you'll wash in the muddy Jordan. Why, he said the river of Pharpar is far greater. Are there not greater rivers where I'm from, Abana and Pharpar? You think God had to have Naaman go wash in the River Jordan? No. God wanted Naaman to do what he could. God will not do what you cannot do for yourself until you do what you can do for yourself. You take the matter of the loaves and fishes. Couldn't God have fed the 5,000 folks without 5 loaves and 2 fishes? Well, yes, he could, but God needed somebody to give all he had. So God could do what they could not do after the little lad and Andrew had done what they could do. The disciples must roll the stone away before God will raise Lazarus from the dead. Do you think for a single minute God couldn't have raised Lazarus without that stone rolled away? Yes, he could. But we must do what we can do before God will do what we cannot do. The followers must fill the water pot. You know, back in the days when I preached revival meetings, I used to go, when I was a younger preacher and didn't have a large work and so forth, I used to go preach revivals, maybe on a Sunday through a Sunday, or maybe on a Monday through a Sunday. And everywhere I'd go, some deacon would stand up and pray. Usually some lazy, good-for-nothing scoundrel. He'd say, Lord, we know that revivals are not worked up. We know they're prayed down. And that's a beautiful kind of prayer for a lazy devil to pray. But the truth is, revivals are worked up as well as prayed down. Yes, revivals are prayed down. You can't work up revival. By the way, you can't pray one down without work either. You know how to have revival? You get out and do all you can. Print some handbills. Pass them out. You can have a good revival meeting. Invite your neighbors. Have a big day. Give somebody a new book because they bring 10. And knock on doors and shake the bushes and do everything you can and say, by God's grace, we'll work, we'll work, we'll work. Then you fall on your face and say, about to fall apart. We've got the Lord's Supper remains in here. And then you fall on your face and say, oh my God, we can't save a soul. We brought them. We brought them. I love to hear Dr. John Rice tell the story about Al Gertz. Al Gertz used to go to the church here. And Al's a sweet Christian man. I often see him in the wintertime walking miles and miles in the cold and to go to church and so forth. And Al Gertz used to go to church here, and I love Al very much. Al was a Catholic man. He was unsaved. And Dr. John Rice held a revival over at the Pine Street Presbyterian Church. And so Al Gertz got saved. He got saved. He was like a little dog named Rover. When he got saved all over, and he did get saved. But he went out to work, and he asked the boss out at work at the steel mill. He said, "Could I put a poster up about the revival, the Pine Street Presbyterian Church?" And the fellow said, "Well, of course you can." And so he put a poster up out there, and the boss came up and, "Well, what's that about?" And Al Gert said, "No, we're having a revival at Pine Street Presbyterian Church. I want you to come with me. I want to see you get saved." And the boss said, "Nope, can't do it." And Al said, "I'm going to come by anyhow tonight, 7 o'clock. I'm going to come by. I want to see you ready." And so Al Gert went by, and sure enough, the boss was ready, and the whole family was ready. And they had a prayer meeting that night before the service, and the boss and his family was sitting out in the service, and Al Gert's in the prayer meeting. Dr. Rice was there too. And Al Gert started praying. He said, "Lord," he said, all this now was a prayer. He said, "Lord, had a revival. We're having a revival here at the church, as you know." The Lord knew it already. And having a revival here at the church. And then, Lord, said, went out and put a sign up out there at the plant. Said they said I couldn't do it at first, but finally they said I could, and they put the poster up out the plant. And said, "Lord, that fellow works with me." He came up and said, "What's that about?" And said, "Lord, I told him what it's about. We had a revival at the Pine Street Presbyterian Church." And said, "Lord, I asked him if he'd go." And Lord, he said he wouldn't go. And I said, "Lord," I said, "You ought to go." And he said, "I don't think I'll go." And I told him, "Lord, I'm going to come by anyhow, 7 o'clock tonight, service 7:30. I'm going to come by anyhow and get you." And said, "Lord, I prayed you'd come by. You know I did." And I went by, and Lord, I'll declare, Lord, he was all ready. His wife was ready, and his kids were all ready. And said, "Lord, I was sort of surprised, but I was happy, and I wasn't surprised either, but I was sort of surprised." And Lord, and all this is praying, you see, in the prayer meeting. And he said, "Lord," he got in the car and he came to church and said, "Lord," he's sitting out there in the auditorium. Now he said, "Lord, I've done all I could. You got to save him." And I've heard John Rice in time, and the Lord did have to save him. And Dr. Rice says, the Lord wasn't been through explaining to Al Gert yet why he didn't save that fella after all he had done. Now he worked it up, and by the way, the Lord did save him that night. Why? He worked it up and prayed it down. The law we've learned, God's irrefutable law, is God will not do what you cannot do until you do what you can do. You work it up and you pray it down. Somebody says, "Well, I'll get saved when my time comes." Brother, I got news. Your time has come. That's like saying, these lights will come on when God gets ready. No, you got to flip the switch. And your time has come. Nobody who ever wastes their time comes to get saved ever gets saved. The next step is yours. God never has knocked down anybody down. You say, "Oh, Brother Hyles, Saul of Tarsus was knocked down the Damascus Road." I got news for you. He had just gotten witnessed to by Stephen when Stephen died, and Saul of Tarsus had seen Stephen die. I'm saying we've learned the lesson now. We've got to do our part before God will do for us what we cannot do. There's a second lesson I want to call your attention, and that is this: no sowing, no reaping. No sowing, no reaping. There is a law of sowing and reaping. You plant a little corn to get a lot of corn. You plant a little beans to get a lot of beans. You plant a little bit of what you want, and until you put a little bit of what you want and give it up, you've got to give up the seed to get a lot. I give a Bible study here on a Wednesday night, and I taught the Bible study of sowing and reaping. You've got to give up what you have to get all of what you want. Here's a fellow says, "I'm not going to put this seed in the ground. I need this seed." Okay, you'll have no crop. And we planted $85,000 on a Wednesday night, and we reaped $2.5 million before December the 31st. Now, by the way, if that same law is good for a church, it's good for you. No, you won't be a tightwad and get very much. I was out in Perry, Ohio, preaching for Ron Perky. And it was Russell Anderson's birthday coming up. Then I wanted to get Russell a present. I love the guy. Don't know why. Yes, I do. He's rich. That's fine. And he gets these tapes, and I said that just for him. But anyway, no, I love him and would love him if he didn't have a dollar. And I still think I'll buy Russell a birthday present. So I went down to buy him a new suit of clothes. And I went to a place that had a sale, a whopping big sale. And I thought, man, if I just had enough money to get me a sport coat, prettiest sport coat you've ever seen, and all of them on sale. And boy, I had a hard time deciding whether to buy me one or Russell one. And so I decided, okay, okay, I'll buy Russell a suit or a sport coat. And I've always admired Ed Wilbur. That suit you wear that has a coat that has a little bit of the same pattern the pants have, has the arrows or something here. I've always admired that. When you sing and you have that on, I always think you look good from the back, not from the front. But so I saw that very thing. And I said, I'm going to buy this for Russell if they have it in his size. And sure enough, they had it in his size, a 40 short, and I got it. But I saw a sport coat. Man, it looks so good on me. Did my shoulders ever do anything for that coat? And I said to myself, boy, oh boy, I'd like to have that sport coat. I counted the money out. I didn't have enough to get me the sport coat and get Russell his suit. And so I thought, now shall I get my sport coat or Russell's suit? Now that is really a decision to make. So the white dog bit the black dog and won the fight. Then I got the suit for Russell, bit her all the time, and sort of walk out. Then the fellow said, now what sport coat do you want? I said, what? He said, what sport coat do you want? I said, well, I don't have enough money to buy a sport coat, to be honest with you. He said, didn't you see that full-page ad in the paper last night? I said, I don't live here. He said, for one day only, everybody buys a suit, gets a free sport coat. And I went back and got the prettiest sport coat I ever owned. Would you believe it? The cleaners lost it not long ago. But thank you for your sympathy. But I got the prettiest sport coat I ever owned. Why? I planted some seeds. No, you'll never get, listen, they that sow in tears shall reap with joy. He that goeth forth and weeping, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing. If you won't give up the seed, brother, you won't get any harvest. And that's why a lot of you are living a little old piddling existence because you never plant any seed. Now, we've learned, have we not learned, that as a church, if we planted $85,000, we can grow $2.5 million? Man, listen, I'm going to call a special meeting. We're going to plant $85,000 every week from now on. And but there is a law of sowing and reaping. If we sow bountifully, we'll reap bountifully. If we sow sparingly, we'll reap sparingly. Now, let's learn that. And by the way, if it'll work for a church, it'll work for you. Learn it. Learn it. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. There's a third lesson I want to call to your attention this morning. Now, this is the most important lesson of all. It comes from our text verse that we read a while ago, and which says, He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? God is saying to his people, look, I gave you my son. If I'll give you my son, don't think I'll give you the little things that you need. Now, here's what I want us to learn. If God will take care of our needs to the tune of $2.5 million, don't you think God can take care of our college tuition? If God can take care of our needs to the tune of $2.5 million, don't you think God can clothe you? Don't you think God can feed you? Well, let me illustrate. I'm living in trauma these days, and because in just another week and a half, or 10, 12 days, David is going to leave our house, and I've been going up to his room some lately, and looking at it and sort of realizing that he's been there now for almost 17 years, and some lovely young lady is is taking him away, and I've been sort of living, a little bit, and I'm nostalgic, and I'm tender-hearted. You'd never know it, but I'm tender-hearted, and I'm sentimental, and so I've been going to his room, and I walked over the other day to his room and looked through it and realized that he had the time 16 more nights to sleep there, and been there since he's 5 years of age, and now he's going to go. And I'll spend a little bit, and I'm in the process of writing a poem about it, and so forth. But in about a week and a half, we'll say to Paula, you can have him. You can have him. Now, and he'll be hers. Dirty Athaliah, Jezebel. He'll be hers. Now, suppose I say, Paula, you can have David. And David moves to another place, the little home, the house they're buying, and moves to another place. And suppose Dave comes to get his clothes, or Paula comes and says, Dave sent me over to get his clothes. And I said, no, you can't have his clothes. Can't have his clothes. Suppose I said, Paula said, Dave can't send me over here. There's a hubcap, of all the places to have a hubcap. It's on the wall in David's room. Been there for years, a hubcap, one he stole off a car years and years ago. And but there's a hubcap in his room. Suppose Paula says, Dave wants you to get that hubcap. And I say, Paula, you can't have the hubcap. You can have Dave, but not the hubcap. You think for a minute that I'd give Dave and keep the hubcap? It's worth getting rid of Dave to get rid of that dumb-looking hubcap on the wall. No. Or suppose I said, now look, Paula, now I have bought most of those clothes, most every suit in that closet I bought for Dave, and I have. Almost every suit he's got I bought for him myself, picked it out myself, or paid for it. They keep your hands off those clothes. You can have David, of course. You can take him, but don't take his clothes. Or he's got some swords up there. I bought him, I think I was maybe in Jamaica or somewhere. I bought him a cross sword, and they've been in his room now for many, many years. And Paula comes over and says, Dave wants me to get the sword. I say, keep your cotton-picking hands off those swords. No, Paula, if I'll give you David, you can have the hubcap. Paula, if I give you David, I'll give you his clothes. Paula, if I give you David, you can have the sword. I went over to his room this morning and got all my ties he's borrowed. I found that tie right there this morning on his tie rack. And I walked down the hall and I got all my ties. I'm going to lock them up, and he's not going to get them. He's not saying, I'll give you, Paula, you can have him, and you can have his ties, but you can't have my ties. That's all. And suppose I said, Paula says, Dave wants you to get his ties. No, Paula, I'm sorry, you can't have his ties. I bought most of them. No, Paula, if I give you David, and I'll sure let you have his ties, and you can have his shoes, and you can have all the dumb things on the wall. Yeah, you can have them. Isn't that what our Father in heaven said? Brother Fisk, our Father said, why don't you trust me? I want to take care of you. But Lord, I just doubt. And the Lord says, good night. I gave my son. I let my son leave heaven. I let him come to earth. 33 years I was without him. I watched him down a cross and watched them drive the nails and spikes in his hands and his feet, and I watched them pull the crown of thorns on his brow. Good night, he says. Why can't you believe me? If I gave you my son, I'll give you your turnip greens and your buttermilk and your bread and your gravy and something to eat. If I gave you my son, I'll certainly give you clothes. If I gave you my son, I'll certainly feed you. If I gave you my son, I'll certainly give you. And if God can give us $2.5 million, God can take care of you. You know, the funny thing about it, but I delight in the little things that God does more than the big things. Those little personal things he does for me. Like one day, I had a cough, and I was about to come to preach, and of course, I have trouble anyway coughing. I just about to die, and I have a place where I keep Hall's cough drops, and I went in to get a Hall's cough drop, and there were none there, and I thought, if I don't have a Hall's cough drop, I think I'll choke. And about that time, a little finger slid under my door, a Hall's cough drop, and I felt like I fell on his honeymoon with the Lord. And I said, Lord, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. One night I was coming, I keep stuff in my breath inside my pocket, right in here. Brother Fisk, we should keep some inside your pocket, right over here. And I got some little things I suck on. And one night I was coming down the alley, and I didn't have any. And I thought, oh, my. I know what I'll do. I'll go back and give you a peppermint stick. I have one in my drawer. Went back, and I'd given it to a little child. Didn't have a peppermint stick. And I thought, oh, if I just had a little piece of peppermint before I go in the pulpit, I think I could make it a lot better. I walked down the alley, and Tom Bennett came running out this door. And he said, preacher, want a piece of candy? And I reached out and took it. There's a piece of peppermint about that big around. And I dashed all up and down the alley and all the way over here. The Lord takes care. The Lord said, if I can give you $2.5 million, I can dead sure take care of your Hall's cough drop. I wish you knew that. I wish you knew it. Be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you. Beneath his wings of love abide, God will take care of you. God will take care of you through all the day and all the way. God will take care of you. On the radio broadcast the other day, somebody was singing that song, Does Jesus Care? I love it. One of the prettiest songs ever written. Now, when you get down to the chorus and it swells, oh, yes, he cares. I know he cares. His heart is touched with my grief. When the days grow weary, the long nights dreary, I know my Savior cares. Listen, on the first Sunday of 1975, why don't you just say, yes, I am going to do for God everything I can do, and I know, and I believe that God is going to take care of me. God can do what he's done. God will take care of me. You know, it's a funny thing. I kid a lot about the Cowboys. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. And I asked you last Sunday to pray for them, you know. I'm just kidding. But I don't get to watch much football. I love it, but never get to go to a game. And last Sunday, right toward the end of the game, I wanted to see us winning. I had to study, and I had some work to do, and I had some mail to open and some letters to answer. But I wanted to see who was winning. And would you indulge me a little bit, maybe in the afternoon, if I just check in and see what the score is? You say, you shouldn't do that. Well, nobody's perfect. But anyway, I turned on to see what the score was. And had about 2 minutes to play. And Minnesota had just scored a touchdown. And Dallas was up behind 14-10, I think it was. And they said Dallas had outplayed them, but Minnesota was ahead. And Dallas had the ball way down its own, 5-yard line or 10-yard line in less than a minute to play. And they got worked up to midfield and had 32 seconds to play and had the ball at midfield. And I have never done this in my life. Never in my life have I ever prayed over a football game. But I said, Lord, I worked awful hard lately to try to get this $2.5 million, and I've carried an awful heavy burden, and I'm sort of weary. And Lord, I just don't feel like, you know, I can take a defeat when Texas loses sometime, but I don't feel like this afternoon I could take Texas losing. And I said, Lord, look, pamper me, and let those guys win that game. They sent the ball back to Staubach. He faded back to pass. Everybody knows that when the game's almost over and only 1 or 2 plays left, that the pass defense goes way back, and they have a sort of umbrella defense. They don't guard the fellow too closely. They want to prevent a touchdown. They let them have a completed pass, and Staubach threw the ball as far as he could. And way down the field, there was Drew Pearson down there with the plays flanker, and he was 2 guys right around him. Now, I do not know yet how he caught that ball. Have you seen the playback? Would you tell me how he caught that ball? I'll tell you how he caught that ball. Huh? Yeah, I'll tell you. Now, I never have prayed for a game. I doubt if I'd ever pray again for a football game. And I said, Lord, this may be silly. I think the Lord looked down and said, my man's been he carried a pretty heavy load lately, and my man needs to jump down and cheer for a minute. And so, all of a sudden, miraculously, Drew Pearson said, I don't know how he caught the ball. Said, he looked down, the ball was on his hip. Now, everybody knows you don't catch your ball with your hip. So hold your hips up, I want to throw a pass to you. No, you don't do that. You catch the ball with your hand. He caught it on his hip. And I laughed and laughed. Now, forgive me, but sweet little things like that. And I prayed through these months. Lord, I know what you do. I know. I live this way all the time, and I know what you do. But my folks don't know. A lot of my people don't know. And Lord, please show them. Please show them. I was down in Kinston, North Carolina the other day, and the Lord takes good care of me. I preached that night, and I never try to antagonize people when I preach. I do it, but I never try. And I made a promise to God. I'll never add to a sermon because somebody's in the audience, or I'll never subtract from it. But anyway, unless somebody tells me I can't say so and so. And so I was preaching along. And in the sermon I was preaching, I mentioned tobacco one time. That's all. That particular sermon, I always list some sins and mention tobacco. And I was in Kinston, right in tobacco country. I didn't even think about it. I'd have said it if I hadn't thought about it. And I mentioned tobacco. When I mentioned tobacco, boy, oh boy, the necks went. Now, when you do that to me while I'm preaching, it's just not healthy for either one of us. And few folks, okay. And I just pulled over side of the road and parked for a while. I gunned the motor though, and I said, "You won't buy me off? You won't buy me off?" I said, "You might buy somebody else off." So I said, "I preach the same thing wherever I am." I said, "I preach against beer in Milwaukee, movies in Hollywood, and I plan to preach against tobacco in North Carolina." Well, I was in a tight, I knew it. Got in my car. It's hard to believe. Got in my car. It was less than a mile to my room, Holiday Inn. Before I got to my room, over on my left, less than 2 blocks behind my room, big explosion took place. I mean, filled the sky like it was daytime or noontime. Fire filled the sky. Big fire. Nobody knew what it was. Boy, that big fire trucks came from all little towns around. Biggest fire that Kinston ever had, I guess. It was such a fire, all the lights were off in the Holiday Inn for an hour. Lights were off all the way around. Whole town saw it. People came from far and near. I went out to look at on the balcony of the hotel because the lights were off. The fellow was looking. I said, "What's burning?" He said, "Biggest tobacco storage barn in this county." I just cried and cried and cried and cried. I've been in town less than 2 hours, less than 3 hours. It was less than 60 seconds after I left the church. The folks said to God's man, "You can't preach on that." I said, "You watch me." The Lord said, "You don't watch him, watch me." The Lord burned the biggest. You could have put 2 football fields inside that building. I walked by the next day and looked at it, and I said, "That's the biggest ashtray in the whole world." Now, that's the kind of God we have, folks. And why don't you trust him in 1976? Oh, you say, "Brother Hyles, I'm so afraid it looks like the economy is going to the dogs." Let the economy go to the dogs. But Matthew 6:33 is still in the book. Oh, you say, "Brother Hyles, the bomb over there in that airport and killed 11 people in New York, killed 11 people in that airport. I'm afraid they're going to bomb the whole country." Well, maybe they bomb the whole country. But Philippians 4:13 and 4:19 and Matthew 6:33 is still in the book. So aren't you going to fret? I haven't got time to fret. I'm too busy trying to take care of my end of the bargain. And so we've lived through a time of difficulty, a time of anxiety, a time of praying, a time of, yes, some fretting. But I think we've learned 3 lessons. Now, by the way, if those lessons will do to get $2.5 million, they'll do to get $2.50 when you need it too. If they'll do to pay off a college building, they'll do to pay your rent. And these 3 lessons. One is, we cannot expect God to do for us what we can do for ourselves. But he will do for us what we cannot do for ourselves when we have done what we can do for ourselves. Number 2, no sowing, no reaping. No sacrificing, no miracles. No planting, no harvest. And number 3 is God in heaven will say, "Here's my son. Take him. He'll dead sure give us the swords on the wall and the hubcaps and the suits and the ties and the clothes and the shoes." I believe he will. Let us pray.
Thank you for listening. And if you like this, please subscribe and consider liking my Facebook page and joining my group, Jesus Answers Prayer. May God bless your day.